Right. Good evening and welcome to tonight's Monroe City Council meeting. This is the regular business meeting for Tuesday, February 8, 2022. The time right now is 7 p.m. Ms. Wyckoff, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Council members present and establishing a quorum are council members Fulcher, Kinney, Hanford, Davis, Fisher, and Scarborough.
Thank you. And Councilmember Hanford, will you please lead us in the pledge? Thank you.
Sure thing. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Hanford. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read a statement in because we do have some things that are a little bit different this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and read in something that has been shared with me. So for the record, at the January 25th, 2022 meeting, after agenda item 7.1, it was brought to the attention of the mayor and city council that the public access link included with the meeting agenda was inoperable, effectively preventing interested members of the public from accessing the meeting in real time as required per current state law. After a brief recess to evaluate the issue, the council adjourned the meeting without taking on the remaining agenda items, without taking action on the remaining agenda items. All business items for listed on the January 25th, 2022 agenda were forwarded to the February 8th, 2022 meeting, which is tonight, including the public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 003-2022, granting 5-year non-exclusive telecommunications franchise to Astound Broadband LLC, and adoption of ordinance number 002-2022, adopting the Monroe Woodlands annexation, which council had taken action on prior to the recess. Before I proceed, do the council members have any questions? All right. I also would like to have the record show that Councilmember Gamble is not here this evening. We heard from him earlier this evening that he may not be in attendance at tonight's meeting. So unless there's objection, we'll consider his absence as excused. All right, not seeing any objection. We'll go ahead and move on to the first item on the agenda. And that first item would be ordinance number 003, public hearing for ordinance number 003-2022. Granting a 5-year non-exclusive telecommunications franchise to Astound Broadband LLC for first reading with Mr. Huebner. So we'll bring Mr. Huebner forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to you, sir. Good evening, council members. As the mayor just introduced, we have back for your consideration this evening as a first reading of a motion ordinance 003-2022, granting this non-exclusive telecommunications franchise to Astound Broadband LLC. Just some quick procedural history on this item. A franchise agreement was first extended to BlackRock Cable Incorporated by the City Council on January 11th, 2021. Over the course of that 10-year agreement, the franchise went through a few changes of indirect control, acknowledging that the franchisee had a change of ownership or control over the franchise holder, but the structure and the terms of the franchise did not change. So when this last franchise, as I mentioned, the original one extended, expired on March 9th of 2021, before a new franchise agreement was able to be negotiated, and a final transition of indirect control needed to be approved by the council, which was done last year. At that point, our legal partners at Ogden Murphy Wallace entered into negotiations with Astound Broadband on this franchise agreement that is before you today. Our legal counsel, Miss Emily Miner from Ogden Murphy Wallace, negotiated this agreement on behalf of the city. Ms. Miner is not able to be with us tonight, but I have a few notes from her to share. And she also provided a memo in your agenda packets detailing the framework of the agreement that is before you this evening. Notes from Ms. Miner, this franchise agreement applies to existing infrastructure. So there is no planned new infrastructure development in the city over the course of this franchise. This is for wire line services, so there will be no wireless facilities or macro towers that will be constructed as part of the agreement. It is a 5-year term with an automatic 5-year renewal, which would then provide a total of 10 years of agreement if that renewal is approved by the city and Astound. This would require standard right-of-way permitting. So any changes or construction that does occur during that time would go through the standard permitting process. Insurance and indemnification provisions included have been reviewed and are approved by WCIA. There are provisions for restoration. So again, if there is any construction that occurs over the period of the franchise, Astound would be required to return the right-of-way to the same or better condition as it was before the work occurred. There's typical bonding requirements. And also this new agreement will be for telecommunications only. So the franchisee is not subject to utility taxes, but under state law, they are subject to utility taxes, but are not eligible for the collection of franchise fees. Because they are not eligible for franchise fees, the city does have the opportunity to request reimbursement of administrative costs to negotiate the agreement up to $5,000. And finally, this agreement has been reviewed by City Public Works and financial staff and our legal counsel from Ogden Murphy Wallace. And the legal team is recommending approval this evening as first reading. One note, as the mayor introduced a moment ago, the agenda bill was originally written for the January 25th meeting. So the agenda bill that you see was copied and carried forward. It lists a date of February 8th in item number 3. However, Ms. Wyckoff has the correct date in item 3 on the slide. So I would just ask that any council member that if the council chooses to go with the requested action this evening, I would just ask that the motion be read off the slide that's up on the screen. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Huebner. Are there any questions for Mr. Huebner? Go ahead, Councilmember Scarborough.
Yeah, in number 3 on the slide on the screen, it says broadband for a period of 5 years and forward to February of 2022. Should the 5-year extension also be in that paragraph?
Great question, Councilmember Scarborough. Thank you. It is not required to be included in that paragraph because it's an express clause within the agreement itself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Huebner before we proceed to public hearing? All right. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. If anybody would like to speak regarding ordinance number 003/2022, granting a 5-year non-exclusive telecommunications franchise to Astound Broadband LLC, please raise your hand now. You can do that by raising your hand on the bottom screen in the Zoom app or by hitting *9 on your telephone. So please go ahead and do that now if you'd like to give testimony on this item. All right, one more call for public testimony on this public hearing. If you're interested in speaking, hit *9 if you're on the phone, or hit the raise hand button in the middle of your Zoom screen. All right, I see none. I turn to council. Is there a motion to close the public testimony portion of the public hearing? Councilmember Scarborough, go ahead.
Yeah, I move to close the public testimony portion of the public hearing.
Davis, second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Scarborough, a second from Councilmember Davis to close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Kinney, go ahead.
Move to close the public hearing.
Councilmember Kinney, I'm sorry, I acknowledged you to speak to an item.
Oh.
Did you have anything to speak to at this time?
I did not have anything to speak to at that point.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and move to vote, seeing no hands. All those in favor of closing the public testimony portion of the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Councilmember Kinney, did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
I was going to move to close the public hearing.
Hanford seconds.
I have a motion to close the public hearing from Councilmember Kinney, a second to close the hearing, a second from Councilmember Hanford. Any discussion on the motion to close the public hearing? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. And there's one more motion for council's consideration. Councilmember Scarborough, go ahead.
Yeah, I move to accept the first reading ordinance number 003/2022, granting a non-exclusive telecommunications franchise to Outbound Broadband for a period of 5 years and forward to the February 22, 2022 business meeting for a second reading.
Hanford seconds, but a point of order, Mayor, I believe it's Astound Broadband.
That is correct. It's Astound Broadband. Councilmember Scarborough, was that your intent to read what's written in Astound
It
Broadband?
was.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hanford, okay. So the motion is as typed on this slide under bullet number 3. Any discussion on the with Councilmember Scarborough as the first and Councilmember Hanford as the second? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Okay, we now have a need for an executive session. This executive session is potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1 subsection I for an initial 10 minutes. The time right now is 7:12. We will go into executive session for an initial 10 minutes. I will announce any sort of extensions to the clerk, who will then notify those people who are still part of this current Zoom meeting that of those extensions. So at this time, we'll move into executive session. Thank you. Oh, Councilmember Lell. I'm sorry, Mr. Lell.
Thank you for the promotion, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of clarification, the council will almost certainly be taking action when you reconvene.
Oh, thank you. There will be action when we reconvene. Thank you very much, Mr. Lell.
Councilmember Fisher, if you're still there, you need to log off of this meeting and go into the executive session meeting. It's in the same calendar invite as this meeting's invite. Oh, and now he's gone, so I guess he did. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The executive session has been extended 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The executive session has been extended an additional 5 minutes. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. The executive session has been extended an additional 3 minutes. Mayor, I did make an announcement of an extension to 7:35.
Thank you. I get to move all the boxes around again on the screen. One of the Deborah Knights is not the right Deborah Knight. Jody, are you able to rename the second Deborah Knight?
Yep, now that I know which is which.
Right. Thank you.
I'm going to go off video for a minute too, because I need to relocate. So I'll be back on video.
All right. Thank you, Deborah.
Mr. Scarborough, if you're there, can you raise your virtual hand so I can figure out which is which? Because that can't tell.
There.
Deborah, could you raise your hand, your virtual hand? So I can tell which is which on there. Thank you.
You must see something different on your end. That was interesting. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're just waiting for Councilmember Davis. He may be in the attendees list. There he is.
Yep. Promoting him.
All right. Councilmember Davis, can you, there we go. Thank you. And Councilmember Scarborough, you can hear us as well?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, time right now is 7:36. We are now out of executive session and we will continue with our agenda. And I thank the attendees for their patience as we're going through the executive session. All right, the next item we have on our agenda is item 4.2. This is proposed amendments to chapter 3.52 MMC park impact fees with Mr. Swanson. Mr. Swanson, we will bring Mr. Swanson forward. All right, Mr. Swanson, you're in the panel.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So tonight, for a public hearing, we're presenting proposed park impact fees. And for tonight, requesting a first reading is simply to take public testimony on the proposed. And so with the park impact fees, excuse me, let me back up a little bit. So impact fees in general are something that's allowed under state law. And they're one-time charge assessed by a local government, in this case against new single-family or multi-family residential development, to help pay for new or expanded public facilities, in this case parks, that are directly impacted by that new growth. So they essentially can't go back and pay for maintenance or any deficits that we have in the system. They're simply there to pay for new growth. And so that the city developed its methodology for the proposed park impact fees under the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan, which council will be hearing later this evening. And from that, they they take in some factors as far as the growth of the city out to a 20-year period, and then multiply that times the need for new parks, and that calculation comes out with the proposed impact fees. And if you go with the next slide, please, Jody. Great. So so as far as the rate history, you'll see kind of historically what the city has charged for impact fees, and these are rates that let me back up. So these are the rates that essentially in the 2021 came out as the maximum allowable charge a city can implement for an impact fee. And that's the 2021, and then you'll see all the way back to 2023. And then in that impact fee unit, that is essentially taking same fees in the top table and translating those into 2021 dollars. So you can see in real dollars what those fees look like from 2003 2021. If you go to the next fee, please, Jody. Or next slide, excuse me. And so by individual impact fees per unit, looking at single family, you'll see the maximum there for Monroe. Again, this is the maximum that city is allowed to charge. And in the bottom there in the purple, it shows the current. And if you go next slide, and then this shows our cumulative impact fees. And so for you'll see fire down there. That's only one jurisdiction on this slide that charges fire impact fees. All the other ones are parks, transportation, and schools. These are essentially the cumulative impact fee that the developer is required to pay at time of building permit with the given jurisdiction. And you'll see with those cumulative impact fees, Monroe sits right about in the middle on the proposed maximum. And next slide, please. And then for duplexes, you'll see the current and then the proposed maximum. And next slide, please. And then also with the cumulative, you'll also see the maximum and the current. So based off the workshop that was held at the last council meeting, there was discussion about the missing middle, which is essentially units discussed between anywhere between a single family and a multifamily residential unit. That's classified in the housing action plan. And so in our housing action plan, it goes into these missing homes and how the city of Monroe is at a deficit for that. And so at the last meeting, there was some discussion about keeping those fees the same and not increasing those just to encourage some of that missing middle development. And then on the next slide, you'll see these 3 to 4 units would still fall into that same missing middle area. And so if you go to the next slide, please, Jody, and you'll see the cumulative impact fee show at the maximum and then at the current brings it back down to the $11,827, which would put us more in the middle if we kept those impact fees the same. And then next slide, please. And then the 5+ units shows it the fee by itself. And then next slide. And then it shows us at the current and the maximum for those. And then next. And then manufactured homes, generally classified real similar to the single-family residential units. If you go next slide. And then those at the maximum put us about middle with surrounding jurisdictions. Next slide. And then this was committee recommendations. We talked about it at the last meeting, looking at the slides. And then I don't know if you could go to the agenda, Jody, or if that's a whole different deal. Sorry.
Can you see the agenda, Bill?
Yeah. If you could just scroll down one more page. So, oops.
Nope, this one?
Yeah, there you go. Up a little bit, sorry. So you can see, just similar to us discussing in the PowerPoint for the proposed impact fees under the table 2 there, you'll see the single family, the greater than 5 units, and the mobile homes would be increased based off the new methodology, and then the asterisk next to the ones that are roughly $2,100, those fees would remain at the current level. Additionally, with the ordinance that staff plans on bringing to the February 22nd 22nd council meeting, that would also include a delay for the start of the impact fees by a 2 or 3 month period. And essentially what that would allow is city staff to notify local builders that are in town that we would be increasing the impact fees. And if they have the opportunity, they could get their permits in earlier to take advantage of those lower impact fees in order not to blindside a builder that may have missed it by a couple days unless otherwise noticed. And so with that, I'm available for any questions.
All right, council, before we open up for public hearing, do you have any questions or clarification for Mr. Swanson? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and open up the public testimony portion of the public hearing. If you'd like to speak on this topic, please go ahead and hit the hand raise button in the middle of your screen in the Zoom app, or hit *9 if you're on the telephone. Please raise your hand now. I do see that we do have one attendee who has raised their hand. The name on the account is Tony Balk, so we'll bring Tony Balk forward. Mr. Balk, you are now in the panel. We will go ahead and get the timer up on the screen momentarily, and then we will ask you for your, okay. So please go ahead and state your name and area of residence, and then you have 3 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Balk.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
City Council. My name is Tony Balk. I live at 517 Circle Drive, Monroe, Washington, 98272. And I'd like to speak tonight in support of the recommendation by staff of the school impact fees. I'm not going to regurgitate what has been shared by staff, but I do want to add one piece of information that I got out of the Housing Action Plan. Presently, according to Housing Action Plan, 75% of the housing units in the city is single family or manufactured homes. Between the years 2010 and 2020, 82% of the new units built in the city of Monroe were single family housing. And that is one of the reasons why I am supporting this recommendation, is that we need to encourage developers to build multifamily housing to address the critical need of middle housing. That is our workforce and the labor pool that our businesses depend upon, and what attracts new businesses to our communities, having an adequate labor pool. And the other thing I always like to remind people why affordable housing is important. One of the least paid people in our community are people who work in daycare and our nursing homes. And I always said that I do not want the people working in those institutions coming to work stressed out because they have inadequate housing or paying too much for housing. That the people who take care of our most vulnerable people should come to work nice and fresh and ready to deal with the issues of taking care of our children and our seniors. So again, I encourage you to adopt the recommendation as presented by staff. Thank you for your time. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Balk. If there's anybody else who would like to speak this evening, please go ahead and on this topic, please raise your hand at this time. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move Mr. Balk back to the attendees list. And I turn to council. Councilmember Hanford, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, it's nice to hear your voice, former Councilmember Balk. And I move to close the public testimony portion of the public hearing.
Fulcher, second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Hanford, a second from Councilmember Fulcher to close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Councilmember Hanford?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Swanson, for the presentation. This makes sense. I do think that we should put an implementation date of maybe 90 days after taking action, so that to help not surprise builders that are midway or just about to submit. think that would be wise customer service move. And I'll move to close the public hearing.
Davis, second.
I have a motion to close the public hearing from Councilmember Hanford, a second from Councilmember Davis. Any discussion on the motion to close the public, public testimony portion of the public hearing?
Mayor,
Seeing none?
this is to close the
Mayor.
public hearing, Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you. I am looking at something that was a little confusing there. Thank you. So again, the motion is to close the public hearing. Any discussion on the motion to close the public hearing? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Any other thoughts or direction from council? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. And that item is item 4.3, a public hearing for an interim ordinance for a code amendment. And this would be item 4.3, public hearing ordinance number 004-2022, adopting interim zoning amendments to table 22.16.030 MMC land use in single family residential zoning districts with Ms. Marrero. Ms. Marrero, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. My first item tonight is presentation on the public hearing for ordinance number 001/2022, adopting interim zoning amendments to table 22.16.030 MMC land use in the single family residential zoning districts. This emergency ordinance will allow community food services as a conditionally permitted use in the single family residential R7 zoning district. This ordinance may look familiar to you as the original ordinance was passed, ordinance number 013/2020 in October 27, 2020. That original ordinance has since expired. So that is why we're bringing this forward to you tonight. Because at the time, the food bank wasn't able to submit a conditional use application. And then the original ordinance had a sunset date. So since then, the food bank has acquired grant funding, and this will allow them to build an addition. It needs to be completed within the year. So currently the food bank is a non-conforming use and is subject to the non-conforming code section, which does not allow expansions. The proposed interim ordinance is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. If the city approves, if the council approves the ordinance, the food bank can submit for their conditional use permit, which will go through the hearing examiner process. At that time, staff will begin working on a permanent zoning amendments to be brought back to the council at a future date. So I do have a next slide. I just want to show you that this ordinance does affect all areas in the city with the R7 zoning designation. So as we can see on the left-hand side of the map is a food bank location, and the surrounding areas in yellow is R7. And then we also have another area in town, which is in the northern part of town off of Roosevelt Road. So that is also R7. So any of those areas would permit a food bank as a conditional use. And we can go to the next slide. I'm happy to answer any questions. The motion tonight is listed on the slide there as number 4.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Marrero. Are there any questions for Ms. Marrero? Go ahead, Councilmember Fulcher.
Could you put that map back up again? Okay, so we have a couple food ministries, community food, whatever you want to call them, in the city. And I know this because it was recognized at the, I went to a Volunteers of America thing up in Arlington, and they recognized 2 of the ones in our city, one of them being at a church. Is that at all affected by this thing? Do we have to watch zoning on that?
I'm not familiar with that location. I'm only aware of the current existing food bank. But if that church that you're speaking of is located in R7, then yes. If not, I'd have to check the zoning to see if that's permitted use, conditionally permitted use, or if it's not permitted.
Okay, I just didn't want to, by saying yes to this one, create a problem for another community food bank that was already being helpful to people. So, yeah, as far as I know, it's not in a R7 district. So,
Okay.
anyway, I thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Hanford.
Thank you. I concur with Councilmember Fulcher. I believe my understanding of it is that if it's run through a church or a religious organization, it's deemed a ministry and not a true 501c3 nonprofit such as Sky Valley Food Bank. That's my understanding of how that works.
Okay. Yes, thank you for the information. And that was my understanding as well, as far as an actual food bank in the city. The Sky Valley is the only one that I am aware of.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Marrero before we go to public hearing? All right, thank you very much. So we're going to go ahead and open up the public testimony portion of the public hearing. If you would like to speak on this matter, please go ahead and hit *9 if you're on the phone, or raise your virtual hand in the Zoom app. Is there anybody who would like to speak this evening? All right, one more call. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none, I turn to council. Councilmember Scarborough.
Move to close the public hearing.
Any second?
I don't have it in front of me, so I can't. Okay.
You broke up for a moment there, Councilmember Scarborough. Did you say move to close the public testimony portion of the public hearing?
Yes, I couldn't read it because it's not up on the screen.
Understood. And Councilmember Hanford, did you second?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So motion from Councilmember Scarborough, second from Councilmember Hanford to close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. I turn to council again. Councilmember Scarborough.
Yes, I'll move to close the public hearing.
Davis, second.
I have a motion to close the public hearing from Councilmember Scarborough, a second from Councilmember Davis. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Councilmember Scarborough.
I'll move to waive section 7.4 of the council rules of procedure and allow for adoption of an ordinance after first reading.
Davis,
Fulcher,
second.
second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Scarborough, a second from Councilmember Fulcher for item number 3 under recommended action on the slide. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Sorry. I turn to council again. Councilmember Kinney.
I move to adopt ordinance number 004/2022, adopting interim zoning amendments to chapter 22.16 MMC, single family residential zoning districts, designating community food services as a conditional use in the R7 zoning district, setting forth supportive findings, providing for severability, declaring a public emergency, and establishing an immediate effective date.
Fulcher, second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Kinney, a second from Councilmember Fulcher for the requested action number 4 on this slide. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, everybody. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to public comments. This is a time set aside for members of the public to speak to the city council on any issue related to the city of Monroe, except any quasi-judicial matter that is subject to a public hearing. 3 minutes are afforded to each speaker. If you'd like to speak to the council this evening, please hit *9 on your phone, or please raise your hand if you're in the Zoom app. That would be your virtual hand. If you'd like to speak this evening, again, raise your hand. I see that our Snohomish County Councilmember Sam Lowe has risen his hand. So we'll go ahead and acknowledge him and bring him forward into the panel. Good evening, Councilmember Lowe.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Nice to see you. Go ahead.
Nice to see you. It's good to be here tonight. As your local elected county council member, I wanted to briefly bring you up to date with the latest breaking news on our transportation needs, specifically hashtag Finish 522. This afternoon, the Senate and House Democrats unveiled a new revenue and transportation proposal called Move Ahead Washington. It's approximately $16 billion over 16 years. In total dollars, it's very similar to the 2015 $15 billion 15-year Connecting Washington package that relied on traditional revenue streams like the gas tax. This new proposal relies on a one-time general fund transfer, programming new federal transportation dollars, Climate Commitment Act funding, an array of fee increases, as well as proposed changes to existing taxes. This new plan does not use a gas tax to fund it. This new plan is focused on multimodal projects and not new projects, and it's very different from the plan unveiled by Senator Hobbs last year that included significant funding for the trestle and 522. There aren't a lot of new multimodal projects in this new 16-year package. Only 6 out of the Snohomish County's 23 transportation priorities are in this package and plan to be funded. And currently only 2 of the county projects are planned to be fully funded. And those are both in Senate Transportation Chair Mark Elias's district. The other 4 projects are only partially funded, which includes the trestle and Highway 522. There's some other projects that are scheduled to be funded if approved across Snohomish County, but they're not part of the ones on the county's transportation list. The reason I'm bringing this up tonight is the proposal is scheduled for a Senate hearing this Thursday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And I would encourage anyone from the body and the community that would like to testify. And I would encourage people to testify that we need more funding for 522. Currently, 522 in this plan is slated for 10 million. The total 522 plan that we've been working on for the last several years is 157 million. So this 10 million is slated for additional lane capacity, but it's not really fully said what it's going to be. And I highly doubt it includes the bridge that we need at Fales / Echo Lake Road. So that's in this package. And then also 210 million for the trestle. That's a $1.8 billion project. This 2.10 million is for design, engineering, environmental costs, but not construction dollars. So those 2 are in there. I just wanted to bring that to your attention as a council tonight. I enjoy serving all of you on the county council. I look forward to continuing to do that. But as I said, this was late breaking today, and I want to make sure that you guys had the opportunity to hear that before Thursday. So I know you guys don't take questions, but I'll switch it back to the mayor. And obviously, if he allows that, that's fine too.
Thank you, Councilmember Lowe. I really appreciate, and I'm sure that the council members do as well, all the work that you're doing to support a number of things in our community, including the transportation priorities, 522, Highway 2, and so on. So thank you so much. And thank you for sharing that news. And to let the council know, I will be providing testimony on Thursday. If you are interested in providing testimony, please let me know. Let me and Deborah know, and we'll get you information on how to do that and can help facilitate that for you. Councilmember Lowe went ahead and offered if the council members have any questions or follow-up. I'm willing to entertain that if that's okay with council. Any follow-up or questions from council members? Councilmember Scarborough, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to thank Sam for everything he's done down there trying to get us money for 522. I know it's tough. It's probably always hard to see the money come back in small trinkets and not get enough to do what we need to get done and just wait until I guess just about everybody else gets what they're looking for. So thank you, Sam, for all you do on the committee and everybody that you get to talk to on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Scarborough. Councilmember
Thank you,
Kinney.
Sam.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question for Sam. I was wondering if there's anything in particular, specific information that would be most helpful to share in testimony if we do decide to partake in that on Thursday.
I think that's an excellent question. Thank you, council member. And as you know, with the city, we've been in a partnership with the #Finish522. And, you know, we got the 23 million pushed up for design right away and engineering, which they've been working on since 2019 through 2023, leaves 157 million, 10 million over the next 16 years. And they haven't really said when over the next 16 years that'll be released, but 10 million obviously won't be enough to do what we need. And so I would just encourage anybody that calls to ask for some more. I mean, I think 50 or 60 million at a minimum would at least help us get the widening done. But obviously we'd like to see the whole thing, since this is a 16-year package, and our community can't wait 16 more years to see 522 finished. And so that's why I thought it was really important that the news just came out this afternoon, so everybody's still digesting it. But this transportation hearings on Thursday, and we definitely need to step up our game.
Thank you very much, and thanks for all your efforts to help.
Any other questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Scarborough.
Yeah, Sam, can you tell, you said there were two projects fully funded. Can you tell us what those two projects were?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. One of them is the Painfield access at 100th Street Southwest. And so that basically connects Evergreen Way or Highway 99 through 100th Street out to the airport at Painfield. So that one was fully funded. And then the other one, I believe, was the SR 99 BAT lanes at 148th Street Southwest to Airport Road in Everett. So those are both in Legislative District 21, which the new Senate Transportation Chair, that's his district.
And do those, well, can you give us an idea of the cost of each of those?
Yeah, the SR 99 BAT lane is 25 million. And then the Painfield access, 100th Street Southwest in Everett, that's 8.4 million.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Councilmember Lowe? Councilmember Lowe, again, thank you very much for coming and presenting this evening and sharing that with us. And I'm sure we'll have a couple other people on Thursday also providing testimony. So thank you.
Thank you. And it's great to see you, Mayor and council members. And I'm going to check out.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye, Sam.
All right, are there any other members of the public that would like to speak to the city council this evening? If so, please raise your hand. That's *9 if you're on the phone, or raise your raise hand function in Zoom. All right, I don't see any, so we'll go ahead and move. Thank you. And all right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. That would be final action 6.1. This is ordinance number 002/2022, annexing the property commonly known as Monroe Woodlands Annexation Area. And Ms. Marrero, please go ahead.
Thank you. My second item for tonight is the Monroe Woodlands Annexation Ordinance. Just to give you a quick recap, the public hearing was held at the January 11th City Council meeting. Public testimony was received and 2 public comments were heard. Staff answered the questions from the public, which included questions about the school district and the no protest agreement for the Monroe Woodlands. Council closed the public hearing and accepted as first reading ordinance number 002/2022. The annexation area includes approximately 178.19 acres and is located west of 175th Avenue Southeast and immediately north of the future US 2 right-of-way. The annexation area is contiguous with the Foothills neighborhood located immediately to the south, and immediately to the east is the Robin Hood neighborhood. If the council approves the ordinance tonight, the annexation will become effective 5 days from and after its passage and approval and publication, which at the earliest would be February 16th. Some next steps for if the annexation is approved, the city must provide an annexation certificate to the Office of Financial Management within 30 days of the effective date specified in the annexation ordinance. A certified copy of the ordinance will be sent to the Board of County Commissioners. The city will need to conduct a census of the annexed area, and the city will provide a welcome letter, informational letter to the affected residents. Also will provide contacts and utility billing information. We'll also follow up with PUD, PSE, the fire district, library district, and the county treasurer and assessor office, just to let them know when the effective date of the annexation is. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Marrero or a motion from the council? Councilmember Kinney, go ahead.
I move to adopt ordinance number 002/2022, annexing the property commonly known as the Monroe Woodlands Annexation Area, acknowledging and requiring that the annexation area shall be designated R7, residential 7 dwelling units per acre on the city zoning map, and medium density SFR on the comprehensive plan future land use map, requiring that the properties in the annexation area be assessed and taxed at the same rate and on the same basis as other property within the city of Monroe, adopting supportive findings, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Davis, second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Kinney, a second from Councilmember Davis for the requested action as shown on this slide. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, final action number 6.2. This is resolution number 2022-004, approving Garibaldi preliminary plat and planned residential development, closed record hearing, and final action. Ms. Marrero.
This is my last item tonight, presenting resolution number 2022/004, approving the Garibaldi preliminary plat and planned residential development. So before I get started on my short presentation, I will turn this over to our city attorney, who will explain the appearance of fairness disclosure process. So Zach, Lel, would you be able to speak on that?
Thank you, Ms. Marrero. As the council is aware from previous similar actions, the council's consideration of the proposed preliminary plat and planned residential development is a quasi-judicial action under state law because it involves the application of the city's regulations to a particular property and a particular applicant. And for that reason, this proceeding is subject to Washington's appearance of fairness doctrine, which requires proceedings of this type to be fair not only in fact, but also in appearance. And the legal standard that proceedings like this are judged by under state law is whether a disinterested person, being appraised of all relevant facts, would be reasonably justified in thinking that a particular decision maker's interest or involvement in the matter may affect his or her judgment. In short, proceedings like this must appear to be unbiased, impartial, in keeping with your roles in this context, essentially as a judge and jury, rather than in your usual policymaking roles. I will now ask the council as a whole a series of questions, and a lack of a response will be viewed as a negative response. The first series of questions will address the interest, if any, that individual council members have in the underlying matter. Does any council member have a financial interest in the project site or the proposal before you this evening? Does any council member have a family member who is a party of record? Does any council member have a personal or familial, employment, or other business relationship with a party of record? Does any council member own property within a 500-foot radius of the project site? Is any council member aware of any other personal interest or involvement with the project, the parties of record, or the property that should fairly be disclosed? Please let the record show that no council member provided a response to any of those questions. The next series of questions will be addressing the issue of impartiality. Is any council member aware of any personal bias for or against any party of record or for or against the proposal before you this evening? Has any council member prejudged any of the issues implicated by this proceeding? Has any council member not reviewed the record materials for this proposal? Is any council member aware of any reason why he or she would not be able to perform his or her duties in an objective, impartial, and fair manner? Again, please let the record show that there were no responses to any of those questions. The final question concerns ex parte communication. These are one-sided communications that the council members may have had with parties of record, the applicant, opponents of the project, or anyone within the scope of the proposal outside of the public eye. And the question is, has any council member had any ex parte communications regarding this matter while the proposal has been pending before the council? And for the council members' edification, pending in this context means the period of time since the hearing examiner issued his written recommendation to the council. Again, please let the record show that there were no affirmative responses from any council member. Mr. Mayor, my recommendation at this time, in accordance with the state appearance of fairness doctrine, would be for the floor to be briefly opened for any party of record to formally challenge any of the council members on appearance of fairness grounds. Pursuant to RCW 4236-080, appearance of fairness challenges are waived unless they are raised promptly when the reason for the alleged disqualifications becomes known.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody here this evening that has any objection as explained by Mr. Lell, our attorney, just now? If so, please raise your hand by hitting *9 if you're on the phone, or please hit your little remote virtual hand button in the Zoom app. Okay, one more call. If you want to speak to this matter, please raise your hands. All right, I see none, Mr. Lell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My only remaining points for the council would be to reiterate that this is a closed record proceeding, and therefore the council should be confining its determination and deliberations to factual information that is already contained in the written record. And then also, like any other quasi-judicial proceeding, the council's decision should be based exclusively upon consideration of the code provisions that apply to projects of this type. And with that, I have no further questions or comments, and I would turn the proceedings back over to you and Ms. Marrero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lell. Ms. Marrero, please continue.
Thank you. For clarification, before I get started, I am not adding any new information in my presentation. Everything discussed tonight is contained in the public record. So if I can have the next slide, please, Jody, thank you. So this is just a vicinity map showing you where the proposed project is located. It's located off Chain Link Road, and the adjacent development there is Mainview. And then across Chain Link Road is Easton Cove. Next slide, please. Here's just some project information. The applicant and owner is Garibaldi Lake LLC. The contact is Matt Howe from CPH Consultants. The addresses are located there off of Chain Link Road. It's approximately 17.85 acres, and the total project is 90 lots. Site conditions: there are multiple single-family residences and accessory buildings on site that will be demolished. There is an unclassified stream in Category 3 wetland that will be in a separate common open space and GPA tract. The preliminary plat PRD application was based on the R4 zoning standards and PRD standards. The public hearing was held on December 30th, 2021, and the hearing examiner recommendation was issued on January 15, 2022. Next slide, please. This is a plat map. This is just showing you the configuration of the proposed project. And it is 90 lots with internal public and private roads. Next slide, please. This is the Park and Recreation Open Space Plan. So as you can see, there's a central park located in the middle of the plat, and then there's the NGPA tract and another recreation open space, which will have play equipment, benches. There'll be a soft surface trail in the central park area as well. Next slide, please. And as your agenda bill states, this is the recommended action that staff is asking for tonight.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Marrero. Are there any questions for Ms. Marrero or a motion? Councilmember Scarborough, go ahead.
I'll move to approve resolution 2022-004, adopting the hearing examiner's findings of fact, conclusions of law, recommendations, and conditions of approval for the Garibaldi preliminary plat and planned residential development PLPRD 2018-02.
The motion from Councilmember Scarborough, a second from Councilmember Davis. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, and that item would be the consent agenda. I turn to the council. Councilmember Hanford.
I move to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Second, Scarborough.
I have a motion from Councilmember Hanford, a second from Councilmember Scarborough to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Scarborough.
Oh, I put it back down, I thought.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. This is item 8.1, 2022 Snohomish Health District Board of Health Representative, District 5, Ms. Wyckoff. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, this is Jody Wyckoff, City Clerk. Before you today is the, sorry, I have to look sideways to read the screen, is the Snohomish County Board of Health District 5 representative. If you recall, on your January 11th meeting, you chose representatives for regional boards and commissions. This was one where there was still a question mark on whether or not Sultan Council Member Joe Nigel, I think is how you say his name, was interested in serving, since the previous representative opted not to continue to serve. We have since confirmed that, and they have received a letter of support from the mayor and council there in Sultan. So before you is a motion of support, should you choose to move in that direction.
Thank you. And I'd like to go ahead and add to this too, that I've had a subsequent conversation with the health district, and there's only one person now, and that's Joe Nigel for consideration for this position. So that's all I have to report. Are there any questions from council or a motion? Councilmember Kinney.
I move to support the appointment of Joe Nigel, City of Sultan Council Member, to serve as the Snohomish County Board of Health District 5 representative.
Second, Scarborough.
I have a motion from Councilmember Kinney, a second from Councilmember Scarborough for the requested action as shown on this slide. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is now under new business. This is item number 9. 9.1, Police Department Body Worn Cameras, WBC, Purchase and Contract Agreement with Chief Jolly. Chief Jolly. Good evening, Chief Jolly. You're in the panel.
Good evening, Mayor. Am I here with you?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be with you tonight to discuss our agenda bill, which relates to the police department body worn camera purchase and contract agreement. The requested action that we have for you tonight is to approve the purchase and acquisition of body worn cameras for the Monroe Police Department. The said purchase is authorized in one installment totaling $161,000 and $161,019. And that is for a 5-year period, paid in one installment. We're asking you to authorize the mayor to sign the agreements that go with this contract. As a result of the 2021 legislative session, House Bill 1223 was signed into law, thereby enacting mandatory electronic recording of custodial interrogations. The effective date of this law was January 1st of 2022. Also, as a side note, I have been a strong advocate and believe that this is good practice and provides transparency for our police department and departments across the state of Washington. It is a best practice and one that's widely accepted in the law enforcement community. The requirement for the recording of custodial investigations is further spelled out below inside your packet. If you have any questions, certainly please ask me. The City of Monroe procurement policy requires that we go before you, the City Council, to authorize purchases more than $50,000, which is why we are before you today. For this purchase, the city is choosing to purchase all of the cooperative contract versus Sourcewell government contracting organization that holds hundreds of competitively solicited contracts ready for use. Using Sourcewell is giving us a 20% discount off the MSRP for WatchGuard Incorporated. Beginning a little bit of background, beginning in 2016, the Monroe Police Department implemented a limited scope body worn camera program. We had 6 body worn cameras altogether, but 4 were distributed to select police officers. We've consulted with the community. We've worked with this and the officers to identify and define best practices, and the resolutions are defined within your package. We did conduct a test even before this legislation was put forward in the Washington State Legislature, and we had 2 additional vendors, GTAC and Axon, which were tested by the officers. Not only did the Motorola quote and bid turn out to be the least expensive, but that particular product and platform was preferred by our officers who conducted the test within house. One thing that is a beneficial consideration for us in purchasing the Motorola is that it syncs well with the equipment that is utilized at Snow 911, and they have already used and integrated that equipment with other agencies. So this will be a good platform for us in which we will be able to have these cameras automatically initiated in certain situations and calls as the officer is dispatched. It is the police department's intent to purchase 36 body worn cameras to be worn by uniformed commissioned personnel in accordance with MPD policy 433, which is also contained in your packet that's already written and completed. Also, this rollout includes implementation of video and audio recording devices in our interview room and our DUI processing area. And this also covers the legislative intent that was incorporated in the legislation last year. The additional costs are for mounting and fixing these, the various systems that support this are listed on the last page. And we are already a little bit behind the, like I said, the legislation went into effect, the law, January 1st, but we don't anticipate, we've got some workarounds to get us through this period. So we're asking for your support and passage of this. I just want to say thanks to Commander Paul Ryan, who did an amazing amount of work putting this package together. Sergeant Southern did this testing process, facilitated all the quotes and the bids, and really did a bulk of the work and should receive a bulk of the recognition. Becky Hassert was instrumental in putting the financing together, taking some funds from last year that we had put aside and combining them to make this financially doable. So very much appreciative of her work with Paul Ryan. And again, thank you to the mayor. We appreciate your continued support of the methods that we're trying to utilize and the means to facilitate an open and a transparent police department that's highly thought of in the community. And I attribute that to your support, Mayor, and your direction, and council for your support. So thank you very much. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Chief.
And any throat lozenges if you have any.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Councilmember Hanford, go ahead.
Chief, I just appreciate you and Commander Ryan and the rest of the team there. I'm very proud of our police department. We have pursued the cameras, the body worn cameras in a limited fashion several years ago, like you brought up. So I feel like we've trailblazed that in some ways. And so now I'm just glad that we're continuing to stay the course and be the top-notch police department that we are. Thank you so much for all of your work on this. And I move that the City Council authorize the purchase and acquisition of body-worn cameras and associated equipment detailed in Motorola Solutions quote number KCI-0245-04 with such minor revisions as deemed necessary. Said purchase is authorized in one installment totaling $161,019.
Fulcher, second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Hanford, a second from Councilmember Fulcher for requested action 1 in this slide. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor,
Councilmember-
Council.
Councilmember Hanford.
I move to authorize the mayor or designee to sign the master customer agreement with Motorola Solutions Incorporated with such minor revisions as deemed necessary.
Second, Scarborough.
I have a motion from Councilmember Hanford, a second from Councilmember Scarborough for requested action number 2 in this slide. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Councilmember Kinney.
I move to authorize the mayor or designee to sign the online terms acknowledgement with WatchGuard Inc. with such minor revisions as deemed necessary.
Davis.
Second, Scarborough.
I have a motion from Councilmember Kinney, a second from Councilmember Davis for requested action number 3 on this slide. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you very much, Council.
Thank you,
Thank
Chief.
you.
Thank
We're going to go
you.
ahead and
Chief.
move on to the next item, which is item 9.2, authorize the mayor to sign 2022 concessionaire agreement with Mr. Farrell. Mr. Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Before you is the item in the requested action is to move to authorize the mayor to sign the 2022 concessionaire agreement with Ken Fulcher to provide concession services at Sky River Parks and Lake Ty Parks, and expressly authorize further minor revisions to the extent deemed necessary or appropriate. This item was originally a consent item at the January 25th meeting, so it's before you now as a new business item. In 2019, the city executed an agreement with Mr. Fulcher to provide services, and Mr. Fulcher has provided services over the last few years, and we have received to date no complaints or service issues. The agreement provides for 1-year renewal periods upon the mutual agreement of the parties, and Mr. Fulcher has agreed to continue concession services at the parks. And with that, I will pause for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farrell. Are there any questions? Councilmember Fulcher.
Just in full disclosure, Mr. Fulcher is my father. We do not share any funds or any business relationship at all. We're just, so that is why I have not recused myself on this item.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulcher. Any other questions for staff or a motion? Councilmember Davis, go ahead.
I'll move to authorize the mayor to sign the 2022 concessionaire agreement with Ken Fulcher to provide concession services at Sky River and Lake Ty parks, and expressly authorize further minor revisions to the extent deemed necessary or appropriate.
Any second?
I have a motion from Councilmember Davis, a second from Councilmember Kinney for the requested action on the slide. Any discussion on the motion? We'll move to vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item 9.3, first reading of ordinance number 005-2022, adopting the 2022 PROS plan and amendments to Chapter 7 of the 2015-2035 Comprehensive Plan with Mr. Swanson. Mr. Swanson, good evening again.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Jody, could you bring forward Cindy Mendoza? I believe she's in the audience also. Thank you. And so tonight, staff is bringing forward for first reading the 2022 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan and amendments, associated amendments to Chapter 7 of the city's comprehensive plan, which is the Park, Recreation, and Open Space element. And so the PROS plan, and Ms. Mendoza has a PowerPoint on this, and I'll just briefly describe. The PROS plan is essentially a 20-year vision for the city's park system, much like the comprehensive plan is. And so with that, it identifies essentially an inventory of existing conditions, community needs assessments. As I stated in an earlier workshop, we have outstanding public outreach on this proposed plan, and then analyzes and plans for existing parks and trails and open space within the city. The associated amendments to Chapter 7 of the comp plan are necessary because tables and figures from the 2015 PROS plan are represented in the current Chapter 7 of the comprehensive plan. And so the proposed amendments to Chapter 7 would essentially replace those tables and figures with figures out of the 2022 PROS plan. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Mendoza for her presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Swanson. I'm Cindy Mendoza. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation Planning at MIG, and it's my pleasure to be here on behalf of the city's Park and Recreation Department to give you an overview of the PROS plan. Next slide, please. As you all know, this is a 20-year plan that provides guidance with regards to park land, recreation facilities, trails, and related services such as maintenance and recreation programs. It identifies community priorities to base recommendations to guide the park system over the next 20 years. Next slide. What's really important to recognize, and this is something that is highlighted through the executive summary, is the important role that parks, recreation, and open space play in terms of helping the city support and achieve its vision for the future. The vision you see here is part of Imagine Monroe. It is coming forward as part of your comprehensive plan process. But you can see as you read through this, just the critical role that parks play in supporting nature, connecting people to one another, enhancing your parks and environment, for example, and even making sure that everyone feels they belong. Next slide. We'd also like to call attention to the fact that this plan is grounded in the notion that everyone needs quality parks and recreation opportunities, and that your residents really represent an entire spectrum of ages, different interests, different ethnicities and racial groups, various income levels, and everyone needs safe and accessible green space and recreation opportunities. So with that premise in mind, this plan is intended to be inclusive and to include recommendations and policies to help achieve that goal. Next slide. It was a 16-month planning process from start to finish, with the intent that we were able to, in phase 1, identify your existing conditions and the park system inventory. In phase 2, as Ben mentioned, really focus on the assessment of community needs through a strong outreach process. In phase 3, to focus on the strategies and policies that were needed to guide your future park system. And then in 4, to wrap this together in an action and implementation plan that is captured in this plan that took us into this adoption process. This was a community-driven planning process, as Mr. Swanson mentioned, and you all have heard previously. We had many different participants involved in this process through our online questionnaire that was conducted in English and Spanish, and then additional activities such as interviews with council members and other key leaders in the community, an advisory group that consists of joint board and commission meetings held throughout the planning process. And then as we move to the final part of the planning process, special workshops and even a pop-up event at National Night Out to involve residents in prioritizing projects. All of this information fed into a plan that consists of 5 chapters that we introduced to you earlier in a draft plan phase so that you are familiar with these items. And then as the next slide shows, there are 8 appendices attached to this plan. And those are important because that's where the meat of the instructions are that will really guide city staff in implementing this plan. So ranging from everything from the inventory to specific details around community outreach and priorities, looking at site development and improvements, and then a full list of recommendations by every site that's existing and proposed, ending with a strong capital projects list that's costed out and a detailed funding strategy. Next slide. And then moving on to the next slide, we want to just give you an overview of the plan. You've seen much of this information, so I'm going to kind of expedite things from here and just remind you that the plan includes a reclassification of existing parks and an update to your existing inventory. Next slide. It identifies park and recreation needs from a technical analysis on top of the outreach that was conducted in all of these different areas. So again, looking at everything from park site needs through maintenance and operation needs and recreation activities. Community priorities really guided the level of service that we recommend in terms of providing parks now and in the future, and even gave guidance on development for your proposed riverfront parks, including the Cadman site. It also helped us understand community priorities around funding for the future and support for potential funding measures that also help us make sure that we are recommending the right level of service for Monroe and its residents. As I mentioned, there are recommendations for site improvements at all parks, representing the life cycle of different amenities and facilities as they are in wear and age, and also focusing on renovations and developments at your key parks. These details are provided in appendices, but as you see, the Riverfront Park includes a series of coordinated moves between all of the parks along the riverfront to make sure that they are planned in conjunction with one another. We also looked in detail at park access. Again, this is part of the goal to be inclusive and equitable in terms of ensuring that everyone has access within walking distance, which is usually a ½ mile of residence. So we looked at areas that will be served when new parks are brought online, such as the North Hill Park site that's already owned. We identified areas shown by the asterisk in blue where new future development will require additional parkland. And then we also identified other opportunities to enhance not just close to home park needs, but also added acquisition at Lake Ty and the Cadman site to really provide the economic impacts and meet the variety of outdoor recreation needs of your residents as well. Moving to the next slide, we quickly looked at your trail system, looking at how it connected to regional trail plans, as well as local loops and walking opportunities, how it improved park access, and even supported connections to the river. And then importantly, we documented maintenance deficiencies and the maintenance resources that you have available, recognizing that the department since 2008 has decreased in terms of its staffing, but increased the amount of acreage that it's maintaining. So what you see is that current FTEs, one full-time equivalent staff person, is taking care of far more acres now than they were in 2008. That was important not only to right-size maintenance and operations funding currently, but also as we look forward to bringing new parks online. And then moving quickly into vision goals and recommendations, the vision that's set forth in the plan is shown here, which we've discussed with you previously. It really emphasizes the need for great parks, natural areas, and trails that create safe and welcoming places for people of all ages and backgrounds, and also protect your natural assets and resources to support an active, beautiful, livable, and inclusive city. If you recall, there are several key goals that were identified for the PROS plan. These 5 goals are supported by detailed policies that now include additional policies on climate resiliency and impacts as well. We discussed those in detail last time, so yeah, we'll move on to our implementation strategies, which again are focused on needs to make small moves across the system to enhance key parks, and then larger moves to build, renovate, and add to your park system. This plan is a 20-year park plan. It actually includes probably more projects than you will complete in the next 20 years. It identifies those long-term costs for all projects. And this piece is important because it positions you for grant funding, recognizing that because these projects are noted in the master plan, there's a potential to identify other funding sources to help move them forward in a faster timeline. But really the crux of the plan is identified through community priorities to create a shorter term action plan. So at this point of the planning process, we went back out to the community to compare what we heard of funding priorities from the online questionnaire conducted earlier with new prioritization of these goals that we had identified for the planning process. And as shown in the next slide, it allowed us to create a shorter term 6-year CIP and action plan that meets the requirements of RCO in order to identify the shorter list of projects that the city can implement. And this list of projects takes into account not only the capital funds that are shown here, but also the maintenance and operations impacts or funding that will be needed to move those forward as well. This is a shorter price tag. It's still rather substantial, and as the next slide shows, if we look at all of the revenues that are typically anticipated over the next 5 years, including the increase in the mitigation and impact fee funding, there's still a funding deficiency. So the plan, particularly in Appendix H, includes a detailed funding strategy of the different sources and strategies to implement in order to carry this forward. The plan ends with a series of prioritization criteria to make sure that projects as they move forward are aligned with the goals of this plan, but also the realities of your park system and how well various projects serve underserved areas or underrepresented groups, support safety and use, as well as the different criteria and factors that you see on this slide. So together, the plan creates sort of a longer term implementation strategy to move things forward by increasing maintenance and asset management of your existing system, developing some key parks such as the one in Northville to provide access in an unserved area. It sets the stage to be able to apply for grants, which is the push to get this implemented and adopted soon so that it will set you up for new park development. And then with the approval of impact fees, allow, again, capacity enhancement projects to be carried forward. It further provides key information to voters to be able to support potentially a bond measure for enhancement of your system, and then really looks at that river greenbelt area to be able to jointly plan those sites and phase in improvements while also coordinating with the transportation planning the trail linkages that'll be needed along street corridors to enhance connectivity across the system. So these are some of the key moves that are addressed in detail in this plan. We're happy to take any questions or comments that you have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Mendoza. Mr. Swanson, did you have anything else?
No, just briefly that this plan did go through the Parks Board, and due to its amendments to the comp plan did go through the Planning Commission, where they held that public hearing on January 24th, where they recommended approval of both.
Thank you. Ms. Mendoza and Mr. Swanson and Mr. Farrell and everybody else, I do really appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I know that you had a very large survey response on it. I like the document that you've provided in the plan, and you've done a really good job, I think, of reflecting Imagine Monroe in it as well. So thank you and the team and anybody else that's been involved in that. Council members, do you have any questions or motion? Councilmember Hanford, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and it all sounds good. I'm ready to make the motion, but I'm just going to slide page 1085 when it talks about who we are. Monroe has 17,000 residents, etc. At the end, it says Monroe's parks and events attract many visitors from the Seattle-Tacoma area. I'm just wondering, is there a reason it's not Seattle-Tacoma Everett, or like how we came up with Tacoma people coming all the way into Monroe?
Mr. Swanson, do you have a response, or Mr. Farrell or Ms. Mendoza?
The data comes from the tourism data that we evaluated as part of this planning process. I believe that the reason it's referred to as Seattle-Tacoma is more so based on the fact that those are the major geographic areas, SeaTac in general, from which people are coming. Certainly, it attracts people from closer than that as well. And more regionally, I think there's an important area of emphasis to understand that you're attracting people from the county immediately beyond Monroe who really take advantage of your park system. So certainly we can call out Everett if that is important as well. We were echoing the data that was presented to us.
Thank you. It's not a big deal. I just was curious how we came up with that. So I move to accept first reading of ordinance number 005/2022, repealing the 2015 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space PROS plan in its entirety and replacing it with the 2022 PROS plan adopted herein, amending Chapter 7, Parks, Recreation, and Open Space element of the 2015-2035 City of Monroe Comprehensive Plan to reflect the 2022 PROS plan, adopting the PROS plan by reference as Appendix F, affirming the city's compliance with RCW 36.70A.130, authorizing the mayor to make substantive edits following adopting supportive findings, providing for severability, and fixing a time when the same shall become effective.
Second, Scarlett.
Thank you, Councilmember Hanford. Councilmember Hanford made the motion for the requested action on the slide, followed by a second from Councilmember Kinney. Any discussion on the motion? All right, we'll go ahead and move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you again, team, for the work you did on this. All right, next item on the agenda is 9.4. It's agenda item 9.4, resolution number 2022-003, adopting City of Monroe public video system policy with Mr. Farrell. Go ahead, Mr. Farrell. Good evening again.
Yeah, great. Good evening again. All right, so we have before you policy considerations. It's regarding, this is a new policy, City of Monroe public video system deployed in public parks, public streets, or other city-owned property, as well as security surveillance systems installed to protect facilities or property owned or operated by the city, such as City Hall, Public Works Facility, etc. The PVS, which is short for public video systems, and video cameras that can continuously or periodically capture areas of and activities on public streets and parks that are open and visible to the public. In 2020, the Monroe Police Department and Parks Department partnered on the purchase of portable video systems. This project was supported through an effort to surveil high crime areas of city-owned property, to include city parks and other public infrastructure, as I had mentioned previously. Staff spent a considerable amount of time in 2021 crafting a draft policy to help guide the implementation and use of these PBS systems, so that work involving them is transparent to our community and lawful in its use. So research for the policy included review of the city of Port Townsend's PBS policy. That's what this was modeled over after. Review of existing city and police policies, consultation with a variety of city staff, and consultation with the cities and attorneys with WCIA, or Washington City's Insurance Authority. The draft policy was presented to the Council Public Safety Committee on December 7th, 2021, with no objections to the policy or installing cameras in general public spaces in the future. And the policy was also presented to the Monroe Park Board on December 16th, 2021, and the board passed at that time a unanimous motion to recommend the policy for adoption by the Monroe City Council. So there are no fiscal impacts associated with the proposed policy. There may be additional costs for deploying such systems, software system upgrades, and managing video records. So if adopted, staff will move to implementation of the policy and schedule installation of PBS cameras at Sky River, Lewis Street, and Lake Type Parks, as has been funded by council. And with that, it concludes the presentation, and I am here to answer and address any questions. And also, I know Chief Jolly is attending tonight, and he also can provide some answers to questions or address any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Farrell. Are there any questions from council members or a motion? Councilmember Davis, go ahead.
Yes, I think this policy is a good policy, and it's a good groundwork for what will no doubt change with new technologies and as we grow and move forward. So it's good to have a policy for something like this. It protects us, and it helps us to move forward. With that, I'll move to approve resolution number 2022-003, adopting the City of Monroe Public Video System Policy and establishing an effective date.
Fulcher, second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Davis, a second from Councilmember Fulcher. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, next item on the agenda then is item number 9.5 under new business. This is resolution setting public hearing date for proposed vacation of portions of 171st Avenue Southeast Street, right of way with Mr. Gathman. So I'll go ahead and bring Mr. Gathman over, Mr. Peterson. All right, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Gathman, good evening. You're in the panel.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will be having Mr. Gathman do this presentation, as he has been working with the applicant regarding the right-of-way vacation since essentially Mr. Falberg has his work behind it. So, Mr. Gathman, it's all yours.
Mr. Gathman, are you there? Looks like we just lost somebody. Jody, can you check the council members? Make certain we have all the council members, all the videos shifted. Tom, are you there?
I am here.
Great. Go ahead, Mr. Gathman.
Great. Speedway, Jody, could you forward to the next slide, please? Speedway RV Center owns everything in blue on this map. and they're requesting the city to vacate what is pink on the map. They submitted a petition for that vacation on January 6th. RCW 35.79.010 requires a public hearing for this action. And it requires also the council adopt a resolution setting the date for that public hearing. At the public hearing, any issues associated with the vacation of this right-of-way will be discussed. And this includes, but it's not limited to, any easements for utilities or access that may be needed. For instance, access for the parcel that is in green that's adjacent to 171st. Any costs associated with determining the value of the right-of-way, and the purchase price the council decides is necessary for the vacation. As I just said, those are issues that will be discussed at the public hearing rather than tonight. So the only requested action tonight is to set the date for this public hearing.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Gaffman. Mr. Peterson, do you have anything to add?
No, I do not, Mayor.
Okay, we'll go ahead and pull the motion back up on the slide, and then we'll turn to the council. Council members, do you have any questions or a motion? Councilmember Kinney, go ahead.
I move to approve resolution number 2022-001, setting a public hearing date at which to consider the vacation of a portion of the ROW of 171st Avenue Southeast.
Fisher, second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Kinney, a second from Councilmember Fisher for the requested action on the slide. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, everybody. All right. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. This is council member reports. We'll go around the screen. Start off with Councilmember Davis. Councilmember Davis, any report this evening?
I have no report for you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Scarborough.
Nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Fisher.
Just attended the legislative action meeting earlier today, and that is it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Fulcher.
Nothing tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hanford.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Kinney.
I attended the Monroe Equity Council meeting on Wednesday, February 2nd.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to staff and department reports. We're not going to go through all of those this evening. However, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them now, or you can follow up with me and Deborah via email or offline. Ms. Knight, did you have anything to add to that?
Don't, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council members? All right, we're going to go ahead and move on then. And I thank our staff for all the work that they put into that. Thank you. We're going to move on to city administrator report. Go ahead, Ms. Knight.
Thank you. I will start with taking a look at the extended agenda. So looking forward then to next week, the 15th of February, we will have a Finance and Human Resources Committee meeting. We'll be reviewing the committee's work plan and potentially taking a look at a recruitment and retention policy. We'll have a study session. Currently, there's only one item for that study session, and that's ownership transfer of the Monroe Youth Activities Building, otherwise known as the Boys and Girls Club. For the 22nd, which is a regular council meeting, we have a P3 committee meeting scheduled for 6 p.m. We've got election of a chair, downtown parking alignment with Mr. Peterson, electric scooters, and then the committee's 2022 work plan. For the regular council business meeting, we have a proclamation for Women's History Month and International Women's Day. A number of items that are on the consent agenda, including authorizing the mayor to sign a local agency consultant agreement with Tool Design for the 179th Avenue sidewalk design and right-of-way services, ownership transfer of the Monroe Youth Activities Building, and accepting the project and beginning the lien period for the 2021 annual road maintenance project. We have a public hearing on the Connor pre-zone and ordinance 001-2022, and then the wireless code with Emily Minor with Ogden Murphy Wallace presenting. We have new business ordinance to amend Title 3 of the Monroe Municipal Code for park impact fees. That was had a public hearing this evening. And then unfinished business will be the Park and Recreation Open Space Plan and amendments to Chapter 7 of the Comprehensive Plan. And that's all we have scheduled for the next 2 council meetings.
All right, thank you, Ms. Knight. Any questions for Councilmember Knight? Any questions for Ms. Knight? All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to the next item then for City Administrator report.
So a couple of items I just want to bring to council's attention that the 2022 department work plans are included in your council packet for this evening. Those work plans are based upon the adopted 2022 budget. And then we will be at the council's workshop that is scheduled for March 29th, starting to take a look at the 2023 strategic plan. So the process is all beginning again. We wanted to bring to the council's attention a request to tour the city's wastewater treatment plant. And so we are tentatively scheduling that tour for August 5th at the study session. So for those members of the council that haven't had the pleasure of visiting the wastewater treatment plant, I always find these tours just fascinating. So looking forward to taking the council around on that tour on April 5th. Wanted to also let the council know that we are finally wrapped up on round 1 contracts for American Rescue Plan Act funding, and round 2, the notice of funding availability hopefully will be released. It's got a tentative release date of February 15th. That round will be open for 60 days in an attempt to get the word out as broad as possible that that funding is available and to collect as many applications as possible for funding. So closing round 1 and opening round 2. Finally, a legislative update. County Council Member Sam Lowe already broke the news that there is $10 million set aside for State Route 522 widening. This came as a surprise to both myself and our lobbyist, Trevor Justin. We had been talking about it earlier this week and didn't imagine that there would be any funding for 522. We were starting to strategize about how to get some funding in the package when this news broke. So we're very pleased. And as the mayor said, he intends to speak at the public hearing on Thursday. Other bills that we are tracking closely, these are bills of council interest. Council had sent a letter back in September of 2021 asking for some clarification of the public safety bills that were passed last year. Those bills, some of those bills are beginning to move out of the House. They were voted out off the House floor with a 95-0 vote in favor. So those bills are now moving over to the Senate. They include House Bill 1719 on how police can use less lethal alternatives. And then House Bill 1735, which clarifies when officers can use force in cases of behavioral health, involuntary treatment commitments, and in cases of child welfare. So we are very pleased that those bills are moving over to the Senate, and we will continue to update council as we learn more information during Senate committee hearings and then Senate discussion. So that's it for the city administrator's report for this evening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Knight. Any questions for Ms. Knight? All right, thank you. Mayor's report, I would just refer you to Monroe this week. Does anybody have any questions for me on anything? All right, thank you. So we do have a need for an executive session this evening. This is pricing of property pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1 subsection C, and potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1 subsection little I, with action to follow, as Mr. Lell reminded me earlier this evening. We will be in executive session for 17 minutes, starting right now at 9:07. I will announce extensions that Ms. Wyckoff will announce here. And again, we will return to this current meeting with potential action when we're done. Thank you.
Deborah, I'm gonna go back to the one you sent me.
That you can use the earlier one that you used for executive session. They're the same link.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
All right, I'll see you in there.
All right.
We're not. Thank you. So we are not back out of executive session yet for the recording. We'll be back at 9:24. I'm sorry, Councilmember Scarborough had a question for Mr. Roberts. Go ahead, go ahead, Councilmember Scarborough.
Jake, I was asked if there is a signal scheduled on 179th and where the school district office is now.
The answer is yes. The city has received grant funding from PSRC to complete a project inclusive of widening of the intersection so that it provides for improved truck traffic access and egress, and also a traffic signal at that location.
And is that projected for when?
Bear with me a moment and I'll let you know.
All right, and we're going to go ahead and open back up the council meeting. Time is 9:24 right now. Mr. Roberts, we'll get that answer at the end of the meeting after we've closed, if that's okay.
Yep.
All right, and so Councilmember Scarborough, just go ahead and hang on at the end of the meeting along with Mr. Roberts. Sound good?
Okay.
There you are. All right, let's go ahead and count them up. So Hanford, Fulcher, Kinney, Davis, Fisher, who am I missing? Scarborough. Okay, we're good. All right, there is no further business this evening. Unless there's objection, we are adjourned. Is there any objection? Okay. We are. Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Hanford.
Good night.
Good night. We are adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
And Jody, if you could just leave the Zoom meeting open so that Councilmember Scarborough can get his answer. And Kirk, I'm sorry, I keep looking at you and I keep seeing the name Deborah Knight. I keep wanting to say Councilmember Knight. So that's why I keep